Hi there. This is a draft of a antinatalist pledge that you would get people to sign, or they put their name at the top there. Um, and I promised to myself never to have kids of my own. That's the clearest message. After that, I'm afraid my writing style gets more and more obtruse and legalistic, and no one will understand it. Um, This is an interesting one. If I have kids already, I undertake to have a discussion with them about not having any kids of their own. And that applies to over 12-year-olds only, of course. You don't want to freak out the little kids. Um, I uphold the rights of the unborn child because remember, I argued that abortion had no moral, moral had no moral status or moral justification, um, out of the same argument that you shouldn't bring children into the world. But if existing child, of course, has the same rights as always, and the UN Declaration on the Rights of the Child, you can look that up yourself. To refrain from sexual activity that could result in pregnancy, to avail myself of all methods of contraception. Don't know how to spell contraception, but like, I mean, in the most that most suits my needs and medical requirements. Obviously, you've got to uh, align yourself with whatever suits you. To disassociate myself from those religions that promote or support human fertility, which really includes quite a lot of them. In fact, even some New Age movement religions as well, like Wicca and neo paganism. Some of them are pretty fertility based. Of course, obviously, Islam, Judaism, and Christianity, especially evangelical Christians. I mean, they breed like rabbits as it is. To refrain from having companion animals that are bred specifically to be pets. That's quite. I haven't done that myself, unfortunately. To refrain from consuming animal products as far as practically possible, which is actually quite far nowadays. Never used to be far 40 years ago, but it's pretty far now. To recognise that the mass breeding of human and non-human animals is what's that word? Deleterious? We don't know. Is detrimental. Is detrimental to the planet, and there are definitely too many humans on the planet to the detriment of all species. Um, that it is immoral to bring humans and non-human offspring into a world that is on balance. It creates more suffering than pleasure. I mean, it's sort of a terrible place to bring your kids into for a start. Um, and you have to witness and you have to sign it and date it. I mean, the main thing is I'm not going to have any kids. I mean, there are some controversial points, like the telling your kids not to have any kids of themselves, which is a bit not to have anything to do with religions that promote or support human fertility. That's quite a big thing, really, because disassociate myself. I mean, when you think about it, antinatalism is very much up against religions that do promote human fertility, which includes Wicca and neo-paganism and New Age paganism to a great extent. So, I mean, don't expect to make many friends amongst your Wiccan people and in your like the Wiccan group at university are not going to like you terribly. Although they don't seem to emphasise that very much, human fertility, really. It's more animal fertility they're going about. to be fair on them. And I mean, not having companion animals is a good idea anyway, I think, really. I'll put that in. And animal products is a bit more controversial. I mean, it can be done now. There's a few problems associated with that from an ecological point of view. But then again, if for any human beings, the ecology would some of the ecology of the world would disappear as well as the humans. So extinction would be pretty final for those ecological systems and the plants and animals that are part of those systems. And But the recognition that you should never have been born, that's a big thing, really. That your existence is detrimental to the planet and to other human beings, really, as well. That's an interesting thing to recognise, more the sort of philosophical basis of this pledge. Um, and it obviously the biggest one really here is like, on balance, this world is crap, more crap than not, and it's immoral to bring humans and non-human animals into the offspring into this world. So if you're breeding non-human animals into this world, that's not very good. But especially if you're breeding humans, bringing humans into this world, that is on balance more for suffering than pleasure. That is certainly. I mean, that's kind of like one of the biggest things. In fact, I would put that at the top, really. You know, I mean, this is this because that's actually the main philosophical argument for antinatalism. It's not that it actually it's not really to do with depopulation or no population. It is the fact that the act of reproduction itself is immoral. As much as one would say that the act of abortion is immoral, but the actual act itself is immoral, and moral people should not be involved with human fertility on any level at all. So I suppose really the problem with this pledge is it covers a lot of ground, and it's philosophically a bit dispersed, really. And I think it could be simplified a lot because it really just covers too much ground in a way. It's a bit too dispersive. It's not really inclusive of the main point, which is this point here, the immorality of bringing children into this world. I mean, that is certainly one of the biggest things. I mean, if the pledge was just that, well, that would be an interesting pledge to put around the streets. But I mean, obviously not having kids of my own. Kids of my own. I mean, you can look after other people's kids, and if people are not going to have abortions, if they're going to have bring the child to term, then you could be the couple that brings it up. Like, you know what I mean? So there's going to be a moral, like if it's considered immoral to have an abortion, even though the law may say you have a choice, but if you exercise that choice in a moral way, which is not to have an abortion, then your unwanted child could go to someone else. So this represents quite a complex social matrix, and implementing it in any sort of legalistic or social way, it will be very, very difficult. That's why it's a pledge. It's an individual pledge. It's kind of like an individual person has to decide on a certain course of action, and that person takes responsibility for their action, for their life decision, which is not to have kids in this case, and not to have companion animals, for example, and not to eat animal products, for example. This covers about the two main pillars of the Church of Nowhere. And if you want to kind of copy this down and then distribute it, it'd be really good. If you want something to actually involve people in the streets or in meetings or whatever, certainly the people could sign the pledge. Now, whether people are going to keep the pledge, of course, is another thing. But the fact that they sign it means that they have awareness or consciousness of the issue, on issues involved. And I think that's important for raising awareness. So it's not so much a matter of signing the pledge like I will never drink alcohol again. Which a lot of people did actually sign the pledge and stuck to it for life. By the way, it's more of a sort of consciousness raising exercise, if you like.